We're reading from I'll Build You a Temple, the Juhu Story by Giriraj Swami. Picture of Srila Prabhupada walking in the morning on Juhu beach. Brahmananda is there, Giriraj Swami. I think that's Yasomati Nandan, if I'm not mistaken. The guy in the blue shirt, his name is Prem, he's an astrologer. Crazy kind of guy. We used to walk with Prabhupada on Juhu Beach. Paramahamsa, he's from the same place I'm from, in St. Louis, Missouri. Paramahamsa Swami. Nobody knows where he is nowadays. Okay, here we are on page 122. The chapter is entitled October 1970 to October 1973, Arriving on the Scene, a Good Fight. As the days passed, it became clear that Nair was stalling in an effort to renege to cheat us. Some of the devotees again questioned the wisdom of purchasing the Juhu land. Shyamsundar in particular thought the agreement and the whole project was a big mistake. You never want to be too familiar with the spiritual master. The spiritual master is directed by Krishna from within the heart. And even if you feel he's made a mistake, it's your misperception. It's your covered over idea. And so one has to be very careful in dealing with Krishna's representative. It's like dealing with Krishna. After Srila Prabhupada had left for Ahmedabad, Tamal Krishna, Shyamsundar, Dravida and myself and a few others shifted to Mr. Valia's Heliopolis flat in Kolaba, which was conveniently located for our fundraising, our work on the Pandal program, and our efforts to procure the Juhu land. Shyamsundar discussed the issue of Juhu with Tamal Krishna day and night. The tenants might not leave the property, he argued, and the land itself and its location was not a good choice. It was just a jungle, overrun with snakes and rats and bugs. No place for a temple and a hotel. Life there was very austere, and it was too far from central Bombay. It was terrible, Tamal Krishna later described, far from the city, and we had to travel by bus and train 2.5 to 3 hours every day. It was unbearable. Shyamsundar even suggested that Prabhupada was aware that his decision had been in error, but was too old and stubborn to admit it. It's pretty offensive. I guess some of the early devotees became a little familiar with Srila Prabhupada because they had so much intimate association. I could never dream of thinking that. Adding to their displeasure, neither Shamsundar nor Tamal, Krishna, wanted to have to stay in Bombay fighting with Nair. If we continued the legal battle, they were thinking, it could be fighting for years, and they wouldn't be able to go anywhere or do anything else. We would be suffering, and there wouldn't be any good results. Even if we did get the land, the project would drag on for many years and take over our lives. The best thing, they thought, would be cancel the agreement, retrieve the money, and get out of the whole thing. That way we wouldn't be stuck with the Juhu land, and they wouldn't be stuck in Bombay. I didn't agree with their thinking, and certainly not with the idea that Prabhupada could be seen in mundane terms, or was not capable of assessing the situation or making a good decision. I didn't even like hearing things put in those terms. In fact, I was completely opposed to what they were doing because I knew how much Prabhupada wanted the Juhu project to succeed. But Dravida and I were junior to them, and we weren't able to change the way things were going. They had the authority, and they canceled the agreement. In Ahmedabad, Prabhupada remained concerned about Bombay, and he requested Nair and Mr. Diwanji to come there and try to reach a final settlement, but they declined. And he had not heard from or been able to get in touch with Shamsundar or Tamal Krishna. I'm very surprised, very much surprised, not to hear from you about the Nair affair. He wrote to them. I have tried to contact you by phone, but it is understood that you have left Mr. Valia's place and they could not say where you are. We have sent a message today reading as follows. Anxious to know progress with Nair, Paul, urgent. In those days, there was no internet, no SMS. If you wanted to contact somebody far away, you had to send a telegram. There's no more telegrams. It's outdated. It's closed. The Indian Telegraph Office is banned. But what used to happen was, there was a form, you filled out a form, you go to the post office, fill out a form, and put your message, sign it, and depending upon how many words were in the message, they charge you. Then they send that to the other telegraph office, and there was a code. It's called Morse code. You never heard of Morse code? He has. So every letter is produced by a short and a long signal. beep, 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 right? So they, by electric, they would tap in a beep or a beep, and they would spell out through Morse code a message. So there were operators that knew Morse code, and they would hear the message. But that's, and then they would write it down, and they would deliver it. It wasn't so long ago, but I guess it sounds like ancient history now. Right? I can remember one time, we were in Vrindavan. Srila Prabhupada was sick. It was towards the end of Srila Prabhupada's pastimes. So I had come to India, a little bit early, right around this time, right around Darshan in 1977. And Srila Prabhupada was staying that time in his quarters. So we would go there and do kirtan. Very quiet kirtan. And then came the idea that we should go traveling to sell Prabhupada's books in the libraries in Gujarat. So we didn't have a van. We hired a van. We rented a van. And I remember the guy who was the driver of the van, he was a Christian guy called Francis. So we drove up through Gujarat. We went to Navsari, Surat, Bharuch, Vapi. And in many of those places, people that we met, they had seen Prabhupada. And they were telling that in Bardoli, which is near Surat, Prabhupada did a program. We met that principal in the school that he did a program. And of course, Prabhupada did so many programs in Surat and also in Navsari. And I began to think that Prabhupada's been everywhere. He's been everywhere. And then finally we made it up to Ahmedabad, and I met Yasomati Nandan. And our party decided, in our party was a devotee named Pita Das, Nrsimha Chaitanya Das, Bir Singha Das, and myself. 4 of us. Now, out of that party, Pita's left this world, Nrsimha Chaitanya left this world, and Bir Singha took sannyas. Now he's Bhakti Vignas Nrsimha Maharaj, Scottish devotee. But anyway, we got to Ahmedabad, and from Ahmedabad we decided that we were going to go to Vrindavan to see Prabhupada. Because it had been almost a month we were traveling, different places in Gujarat. So we left our van in Ahmedabad temple. That time the temple was in a place called Ashram Road. It was a rented place. Yasomati Nandan was there. He was living there. His wife was there, and one devotee named Krishna Nam. He was a pujari. Not many devotees. So we went to Vrindavan. And we stayed there with Prabhupada. So many things happened. Many mystical things, amazing things happened in that time. But I won't get into that. I'll speed up. And it was decided that we would, during the week, do the libraries, sell books around Vrindavan, in Mathura, other places. And on the weekend, we'd come back to be with Prabhupada in Vrindavan. But we needed to get the van, which was back in Ahmedabad. So I got chosen to go back to Ahmedabad and pick up the van. And when we finally got, after so much trouble, that's a whole nother story, got to Ahmedabad, it was 1 o'clock in the morning. And we woke up Yasomati Nandan, and we were talking. 1 o'clock in the morning, okay? So then from the window came a voice, and the voice said, "Telegram." Now, I have lived in India for a long time, almost 40 years. And I have never, ever seen a telegram delivered at 1 o'clock in the morning. Never. There's an older gentleman. Have you ever seen a telegram delivered at 1 o'clock in the morning? You're lucky they're delivered at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. But somehow or another, this telegram was delivered at 1 o'clock in the morning. So Yasomati Nandan read it, and it said, Srila Prabhupada has left. Come to Vrindavan immediately. Signed, Gopal Krishna. So anyway, that was pretty interesting how that telegram service worked at that time. Prabhupada had a feeling that something might go wrong and that Shyamsundar and Tamal Krishna might want to cancel the agreement. Vishaka Dasi had just arrived in Ahmedabad from Bombay to see, hear, and photograph Prabhupada at the Pandal. And he called her into the room. Quote, Tamal and Shyamsundar are in Juhu, he said, and I suspect they may cancel our sales agreement with Nair. I've tried to phone him, but I cannot get through, and telegrams may not reach them. I'd like you to return to Bombay and tell them that under no circumstances should they cancel the agreement. Vishaka took the next train to Bombay to convey Prabhupada's instruction, but when she arrived the following morning, it was already too late. What Prabhupada had foreseen had already happened. The sales agreement had been canceled. Even then, and even though Prabhupada had personally sent Vishaka to speak to them, Shyamsundar and Tamal didn't want to listen to what she had to say. She was just a woman, they thought. What could she tell them? They thought they knew what they were doing. Dravida and I had been shocked when we heard about the cancellation. We knew that without an agreement, we had no legal standing, and we had neither gotten back our earlier payments, nor did we have any claim to potential ownership. But When Vishaka delivered Prabhupada's message and we saw how she had been treated, we became even more upset. I immediately called Prabhupada in Ahmedabad. He rarely spoke on the phone, and I had never spoken with him on the phone before, but the situation was critical. Bhaktivedanta Swami here, I heard, when Prabhupada got on the line. To hear his voice was itself a tremendous spiritual experience. For a second, I felt great ecstasy, despite the seriousness of the matter at hand. Yes, he asked. When for some moments I did not reply. His question brought me back to the situation at hand. Srila Prabhupada, I managed, trembling. This is Giriraj Das. Vishaka came and brought your message, but they didn't want to listen to her because they thought that she was just a woman. Yes, yes, he repeated. Srila Prabhupada, I finally blurted out, they canceled the agreement. Prabhupada was silent. Then in a grave voice, filled with anger, concern, and resignation, he said, then everything is finished. He asked me another question about the money, but I didn't know the answer. You are phoning me and you don't have all the information, he said. You are also useless. I told him that Shyam Sundar was thinking of leaving Bombay and coming to Ahmedabad to speak to him. Yes, that is good, he replied. Let him come. Then, understanding that I was in anxiety about the whole situation, he said, don't be anxious, and then he hung up. When Prabhupada phoned Tamal Krishna to find out what had happened, Tamal Krishna tried to explain that they had seen that there were many defects with the agreement, and so had canceled it. You couldn't cancel it, Prabhupada said. Yes, we did cancel it, Tamal Krishna replied. And then Tamal Krishna later recalled, all I heard was click, no further discussion. Somehow or other, the powerful, illusory energy, it was our mind that Prabhupada had given us the right to decide what to do that was needful. And we took that to mean we should decide whether it was better to cancel or to go ahead with it. Without Prabhupada's knowledge or approval, and he and Shyam Sundar had gone back and forth with the lawyers trying to find a way out of the deal. And the lawyers had provided a host of reasons why the sales agreement was not good. If we wanted the money back, they had said, we should cancel the agreement. Unless we did, if we fought the case in court, the funds would be held up in abeyance. We would have to file suit and might take over a decade to get the money back if we ever did. We didn't have much experience in these legal dealings, but we knew we didn't want the funds to be locked up and possibly lost. I think they only had given like 4 lakhs of rupees or something. Right? Today it doesn't sound like much, right? 4 lakh. But in those days it was a lot of money. A lot of money. You know, maybe the whole income of the temple for the whole year was not much more than that, you know. So for them, there was a lot of money. Ultimately, based on the line of thinking and guided by the lawyers, after Prabhupada had worked on the agreement for 2 years, Tamal, Krishna, and Shyamasundar had canceled it in no uncertain terms. Due to the inability of the vendor to fulfill her part of the supplemental agreement for sale, dated 24th November 1972, the said supplemental agreement, as well as the original agreement of sale of 8th February 1972, stand terminated. Therefore, we are no longer interested to purchase the property. It was basically due to our spiritual defect that we did not carry out Srila Prabhupada's desire. Tamal Krishna later admitted it was so clear and strong a desire, yet we couldn't see it as such. We thought that Prabhupada had made a mistake. We began to feel, oh, we've got to get out of this agreement. We've got to cancel it. And our lawyers showed us how we could do it. I know it sounds unbelievable. It is unbelievable to me also, but we did it. It was very unfortunate. It was one of those things when the disciple has this independent intelligence and independent desires that are separate from the spiritual master. It was a very big mistake. As Prabhupada later explained, our lawyer had their own vested interest. And although we are ostensibly their clients, they were not actually working on our behalf. The land was worth more than the agreed sales price, and the agreement was perfectly sound, but they didn't want us to get the land. They had, we eventually learned, been in cahoots with the other side. Now, who knows what the word cahoots means? Cahoots. Anybody else? Cahoots. They had some understanding. They had some usually it's in a very negative sense, Some like chupakaraka, some information, they were, right? They were in cahoots with each other. I think that's American English. It's not British. American. Cahoots. So there we were, still on the land, but with no legal standing, no agreement, no claim. We were trespassers. All we could do was to go to court and ask for a return of our deposit. But Prabhupada did not lose his spirit or hope. I shall be the last man to give up Hare Krishna land to that rogue Mr. Nair, he wrote to Captain Singhal from Ahmedabad on December 15th. He has taken our money, but tactfully not given us the conveyance. And on the same day, he wrote to Mrs. Singhal, we have neither changed our plan, nor have we any intention of changing our plan of developing Hare Krishna land in Bombay. We shall stick to the place to the last moment, and we require your cooperation very much. He was already planning how to rectify his disciples' mistake. No money had yet been transferred, so perhaps it was not too late. Harikesh had made a life member of S.R. Vakil, one of the main lawyers of the entire Tata corporate empire. And when Mr. Vakil heard about our difficulties, he cited a law that gave us protection, even though we had canceled the agreement. The Easements Acts dictated that if you leased the property and built a structure on the property, then even after the lease expired, you had the right to retain the structure. So that was what we would do. Nair had given us permission to build our small, semi-permanent temple, and now we would claim that even though the sales agreement had been canceled, we still had the right to keep the temple regardless of the status of the sale. Anyway, that was our argument. Though it wasn't the strongest, Prabhupada would have to return to Bombay. Until then, nothing more could be done. When Prabhupada arrived in Bombay, there was a rousing reception at the airport, including our friend Baharilal Khandwal. I had avoided calling Mr. Khandwal about the difficulty with the land because I was afraid he would not give his donation of 1 lakh of rupees until the dispute was resolved. I thought that at least I would let him give his donation first. But then Prabhupada met him at the airport. He informed him about our problem with Nair and told us to give him the legal papers and asked for some help. My heart sank, adding to my apprehension that Mr. Khandwal might hold his donation until the problem was solved. Tamal Krishna and I were concerned that we were asking too much of him. But Prabhupada said that although the case might be a big thing for us, for Mr. Khandwal, it was small. He must be having so many cases like this going on. Because we did not have a proper place for Prabhupada in Juhu, we often arranged for him to stay with friends in Bombay. In Ahmedabad, Kartikeya Mahadeva, an early life member and supporter, had offered to share his flat at Sea Face Park, 5 buildings built in a horseshoe formation with the sea at the open end. And after that, they had spent 4 days in his own flat. Mr. Mahadevia arranged for Prabhupada and some assistants to move to the flat of his recently deceased brother, Kumud Chandra, in another building in Sea Face Park. The rest of us stayed at Mr. Walia's flat. While Prabhupada had been in Ahmedabad, Shamsundar shared with us his assessment of ISKCON. He thought that the leaders wanted only yes men who would follow instructions and go on Sankirtan without being independently creative or intelligent. Therefore, we were not attracting quality people. He had ideas about how the society could be expanded in the West, but he didn't think we had anyone capable of approaching professors or other intellectuals. Thinking of my own background and inclination, I had told Shamsundar that I was acquainted with many leading intellectuals, if not personally, at least through their writings. I felt that I could meet and communicate with them and attract them to Krishna consciousness. He had thought it was a great idea. Yes, this is what you should do, he said. You are wasting your time in India. You are just rotting here. You should go to the West and preach to these intellectual leaders. The talk had bewildered me. Much of what Shamsundar said seemed to make sense. It didn't seem that I was suffering in Bombay, fighting with Nair, and I always felt that I should approach the educators and intellectuals in America. And when I had spoken with Prabhupada in Calcutta about my future service, he had mentioned that I should go to universities and get his books accepted as required reading, so I wasn't sure what to do. Finally, though, I did not like to bother Prabhupada with unnecessary questions. I realized that he was the only person who could provide me with an answer. So I approached him at Mr. Mahadeviya's flat. Shamsundar, I told him, thought I would be better engaged by going to the West and preaching to intellectuals. Prabhupada listened quietly while Thrutakirti gave him a massage. Then he said, suppose you are massaging Krishna's left leg, and you think, now I would like to massage his right leg. That is also service to Krishna. But Krishna may be feeling that actually he wants more massage on his left leg, Hearing Prabhupada's words, I understood that Krishna wanted me to remain in Bombay. Actually, Prabhupada said, your service here is more important. Hearing this, I immediately abandoned my idea of preaching in the West, offered my obeisances, and left the room. Later, when I considered what Prabhupada had said, I concluded that I had been foolish. Obviously, Prabhupada wanted me in India. If he had wanted me to go to the West, he would have said so. And Prabhupada himself was concentrating on India, especially on Bombay. He had already written to me that Bombay was the richest city, the gateway to India, in all respects the most important city. Really, I could have figured it out for myself, but Prabhupada had been kind and merciful. He had given the answer and had not seemed to mind the question. So why was Prabhupada concerned about making a temple in Bombay? Why was that his program? Mayapur was not done yet. Vrindavan wasn't even started yet, 1972. I mean, it was started, but, it wasn't complete. Why was he concerned about Bombay? What's that? Yeah, there's pious people, but there's pious people everywhere, not just in Bombay.
Because it is the richest city in India.
Yeah, that's true. It's the richest city. But there was another reason. You see, at that time they were thinking Hare Krishna, Hare Ram was some hippie movement. There was this movie by a nun, right? Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Damaradam, right? Subhesham, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Damaradam. So Prabhupada was very concerned that there be the Indian public accept ISKCON as authorized. And he even had a pamphlet. We used to have some of those pamphlets. But the name of the pamphlet was ISKCON is authorized. And in it, he had various statements from government officials and a little write-up about the Maha Mantra. So pretty thick. It was like that, pretty thick. Krishna consciousness is authorized. It had come in the parliament that ISKCON, the Hare Krishnas, are CIA. Yeah. That concerned Prabhupada very much. That people were getting the wrong idea. So he felt that if a opulent temple was established in Bombay, and that we would garner the support of important people and moneyed people also, then ISKCON would be considered authorized. The status of ISKCON would be elevated from thinking Dhamma to something else. That was his plan. And that's why, he put so much focus on Bombay and having a center, an opulent center. There was nothing as important to Srila Prabhupada as his books. That was the most important thing. But he was also concerned that the movement would grow in India. Already in the West, it was expanding like anything. I remember I joined in 1973. At the Sunday feast, we'd have at least 100 to 150 young people. All, 20, 21, 23, they would come to the Sunday feast. They would chant Hare Krishna. And every Sunday, over 5, 10 persons would stay overnight at the temple and check out Krishna consciousness. So in the West, it was growing like anything. But in India, people had this false conception. We'd walk down the street and people would go, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram, Dhamma Dham. So Prabhupada wanted to do something to change that perception. He was very concerned. And so he saw the opportunity to do that by having this Juhu temple. And his idea was that this would be a showcase for Krishna consciousness, the highest standard of Krishna consciousness. He wanted everything very first class in Juhu. And that would enhance the reputation of ISKCON all over India. But Shyam Sundar didn't know that. Tamal Krishna didn't know that. They couldn't understand Prabhupada's plan, right? They had their own idea. So it's never a good idea to have your own idea. It's always better to have the superior's idea. Okay? Srila Prabhupada. Well, Prabhupada, he depended a lot on the members, especially the members here in Bombay, the people that he knew. Actually, he knew Brijratan Mota before he even went to America. He was his good friend, Brijratan Mota. So many times he would call him and get his advice and, explain things to him, and he would take his advice seriously. If you look at the Back to Godhead magazine, there's a section of the Bhagavatam that's there, right? The whole Bhagavatam is serialized in the Back to Godhead magazine. And Prabhupada started publishing the magazine like that with a section of the Bhagavatam because he got that advice from Brijratan Mota. He told him, why don't you serialize your Bhagavatam in the back of Godhead magazine? And Prabhupada took that advice and started doing it. So he valued the advice of some of the members, like MP Maheshwari. He was a friend of Mr. Mota, and took their advice seriously. Also, while he was staying in Heliopolis, a letter arrived for Prabhupada from Mr. Bridgerton Mota, asking spiritual questions. We rarely replied to such letters ourselves, but because Prabhupada was not in Bombay and Mr. Mota seemed to be a substantial person with spiritual interest, I thought I should meet him as soon as possible. So I phoned his office and made an appointment. Mr. Mota was everything I had anticipated, affluent, intelligent, and inquisitive. As it turned out, he was one of the most prominent businessmen in Bombay and was married to the daughter of Seth R.D. Birla, and was the illustrious Birla family, the wealthiest family in India. Mr. Mota was one of the leaders of the Vishva Hindu Parishad, the world's most famous Hindu organization, whose goal was to unite and strengthen all Hindus. But he was also a staunch impersonalist, and when I began preaching to him about the Bhagavad Gita, he started to give me his Mayavad philosophy. When Krishna says me, he claimed, he doesn't mean Krishna the person. Krishna is not Krishna. Krishna means something else. Krishna, he said, meant the supreme truth, the impersonal one, the all-pervading Krishna, who's greater than the person Krishna, and could come in any form and live in anyone's heart, in everyone's heart. When I told Prabhupada about the meeting, he said, first of all, if Krishna is not Krishna, then who is he? Mahota? And is Mr. Mota not Mr. Mota? Does Mr. Mota also mean someone else? Second, even assuming that the impersonal absolute truth is greater than Krishna, how do I benefit? You should ask Mr. Mota, what is more valuable to you? 10 lakh rupees distributed with 1 rupees in everyone's pocket, or 1 lakh of rupees in your pocket? Even if Mr. Mota believed that the all-pervading Krishna was greater, Prabhupada was saying, he would get more benefit from the person Krishna. And again, he gave a perfect analogy according to the mentality of the person. Another wealthy impersonalist, Dr. N.D. Desai, also lived in Seaface Park and often came to meet Prabhupada and argue with him. Dr. Desai was both intelligent and educated, but he was a follower of Swami Chinmayananda, Mayavad impersonalist, and would present all sorts of impersonalist arguments which Prabhupada would promptly and thoroughly defeat. Then Dr. Desai would approach Swami Chinmayananda and tell him, Bhaktivedanta Swami said such and such. And Swami Chinmayananda would tell him what to say in reply, which Dr. Desai would do, only to have his argument smashed again. Like this, Dr. Desai went back and forth between them. But eventually he realized that Prabhupada's arguments could not be refuted, and further, that Prabhupada was of impeccable character, and his heart softened. Out of respect, I would offer my obeisances and listen to Prabhupada, Dr. Desai replied. But I was a Mayavadi, and I would also argue with him. I would say Brahman is supreme, not Krishna. Brahman takes the form of Krishna, Ram, the Shringa, etc. Prabhupada would tolerate my nonsense and give me prasad. He would say, who has told you all this nonsense things? I would reply, my spiritual teacher is Chinmayananda Swami. Prabhupada would say, oh, that rascal, he's the biggest Mayavadi. Ask him, if you're Narayan, why are you getting old? Why are your teeth falling out? Why is your hair getting gray? Why are you not looking young like Narayan? This is all nonsense. God is always God. He doesn't become God. We are always Jivatma and will always be Jivatma. We are part and parcel of God, and the part and parcel can never be the same as the complete whole. So I'd go back to Chinmayananda Swami and ask him, Swamiji, why do you get old? If you control Mother Nature, why are you getting old? You cannot control that. And he would say, I have to look old so that people respect me more. I'd go back and tell Prabhupada he was to look old because people will respect him more. And Prabhupada would say, that is rascaldom. Nature is under Krishna's control, not under Chinmayananda's control. He will always be controlled by nature. You go and tell him that. He would usually quote some verse from the Bhagavad Gita, like the verse where Lord Krishna says, I am the seed-giving father. How could Swami Chinmayananda be the seed-giving father of everybody? Again, I'd go back and tell Swami Chinmayananda. Eventually, Prabhupada asked me to invite Chinmayananda Swami to come and have a debate. I asked Prabhupada, what point shall we debate? He said, we shall debate whether Chinmayananda Swami will lift Govardhan Hill or not. If he's God, he should be able to do that. God, Krishna did it. If he knows what's in my mind and everybody's mind, then he's God, Paramatma. But if he only knows what his own body, and that too not fully, he's just another human being who's trying to cheat God and trying to cheat everyone else. I asked Chinmayananda Swami, are you prepared to have this debate? It'll resolve this awful doubt I have now as to which of you is the real spiritual master. But Chinmayananda Swami refused. I asked Chinmayananda Swami, can you please tell me whether you can know what's in the minds of everyone? God knows what's going on in everyone's mind. Can you do that? If I sit down now and think something, would you be able to write down what I am thinking? He said, no, I'm not a mind reader. I said, no, I'm not talking about reading minds. If you're really an elevated level where you are one with God, then it would be like you've plugged yourself into a computer that has so many facts. You could be able to retrieve information. He couldn't do that. Then I surrendered to Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Dr. Narendra Desai, Srinathji Prabhu ki.
Hare.
Yeah.
Thank you for that information. Very wonderful. Why Prabhupada wanted to build. I never knew this. First time.
Yes.
Actually,
Vrindavan got open, and Jayapataka Swami felt, okay, now Vrindavan's built, build Mayapur. But Prabhupada said, no, we have to build Bombay first. And that was the reason. Jayapataka Swami felt it's the Dham, Mayapur Dham. But Prabhupada wanted to establish ISKCON's reputation as being authoritative, not some new thing, but having a cultural heritage based on the Brahma Sampradaya, Gaudiya Vaishnavas. That's right.
I have a question. In Prabhupada Lilamrita, it is said that when Prabhupada was coming in 1960s to Sumati Maharaj's house, he felt that if Krishna gives me this land, I will build a palace for him. That is why Prabhupada was insisting that this land, he didn't want to give up that land. Are Shyam Sundar Prabhu and Tamal Krishna Maharaj aware of this?
Oh, that I don't know what they were aware of. Maybe, maybe not.
That time, did the devotees are aware of this? Any?
Can't say. Can't say. But when Radharasi Hare were here, and the fight was going on with Mr. Nair, Srila Prabhupada made the point that actually our business as devotees is not to fight. But because Krishna was already here, and if Krishna went away, it would be an insult to Krishna, therefore I fought. And it was a big fight. And you can see, Prabhupada didn't even have the support of his top men, right? He was fighting alone, practically. And then when he was in Australia, the news came, Mr. Nair died of a heart attack. And Prabhupada put down the phone and said, that was a good fight. I had to ask Lord Nishingadev to help me.
Srila Prabhupada was very, very angry with Devanand for producing that movie.
Yeah, he was very upset.
He said, I want to urinate on him.
Yeah, he didn't like that. He didn't like that. But Anand saw an opportunity to make a buck with a movie. And I think that was a pretty smash hit. Went around pretty good. At least I remember people when I came here, and that was many years later after the movie, they were still saying like that.
After that, all his movies are flops, I heard.
Oh, maybe, I don't know.
He never met with any success after that.
He lives right, he used to live right over here. But things changed. After the temple opened, after Juhu opened, people started to come here. And when we're out on traveling Sankirtan, so many people, I've been to your temple, it seemed like the whole world had been to our temple in Juhu. And even in Mayapur, which was a very tough place. And gradually people accepted ISKCON as authorized and bona fide, and it changed. The early devotees in Calcutta, remember that the people in the train would pull their sikas and, make fun of them. But that's all changed. Now wherever the devotees go, they're respected by Srila Prabhupada's mercy and the Juhu temple. Shri Shri Radharasi Hare ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. But we have a great responsibility to keep that reputation by inculcating in our character the qualities of a devotee. Right? To, follow Mahaprabhu's instruction. Trinadapi sunichena turodapi sahisnana amanena manadena kirtaniya sadaya. Then what Prabhupada worked hard for to establish, then that way we can maintain. Right, Nishingananda Prabhu? Nice to see you. Hare Krishna. Jai. Shri Shri Radharasi Hare ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Srila Prabhupada's followers ki. Nitai Gaur Premanandi.